All praises, glory, and honor be to Yahweh by Shem Yahushai, by Shem Kakwadash, double honor to our apostles, a great millstone that rule with honor and diligence. Honor to you brothers out there pursuing truth and love and sincerity, wake up the elect. Peace be to the elect and their families, those that change according to the word, calling the name Yahweh by Shem Yahushai. Time of trouble, we say, peace be unto you, man. The Lord have mercy on you in these evil times that we're living in. And I just want to share this story with you all. As you know, some may know and some may not know. We have the brothers from some brothers from Missouri visiting us, and I just told them this story through the spirit. And I just told them this story, and they were like, man, like wow. And I just wanted to share this story as a testament of faith unto the true believers, the Akim, the Akwat, that are true and in the spirit. I just want to share this story. Maybe it may have been my second time going up top to New York and being around the apostles. I believe it was my second time. Yeah, it had to be, because the first time, you know what? Salakia. I may be mistaken. And it could have been the first time that I went to New York. I was, just trying to make a way for myself. I was in chef school. I really just, as a man, I just wanted to know how to cook for myself. I wasn't expecting to have a wife or somebody to cook for me. And, I'm ex-military, so, the military pays for my schooling. I was in chef school at Le Cordon Bleu. And, in chef school, you meet a diverse group of people, but it was one man in particular that I remember because, for the sake of this moment and the building of our faith, it has to be told. I believe his name was Scotty, but he was an Italian dude. He looked like a white boy, but he was a friend that was real close to me when I was in chef school, and this is while I was in the truth. He was one of the guys that looked out for me. That no, that's my friend. I don't know if a lot of people know, but my worldly name is Paul, but he always Paulie, hey Paulie. Italian dudes are they Jake. The real Italian dudes are Israelites. He never called me by my government name. He always called me Paulie. Hey, Paulie. Hey, and his name was Scotty. He's like, yeah, I'm Scotty. You call me Paulie, and I was like, my name is. No, that's not my name. But he kind of like, he was like, man, like, hey, brother, like. He kind of adopted me as a brother. It's kind of funny because, I used to listen to, I back in the day I used to listen to, Salakia. I'm as you know, I'm driving. But I used to listen to Richard Pryor back in the day, and he used to talk about how the Italians kind of adopted him. They thought he was a cool black guy because a lot of them Sicilians are Israelites. A lot of them Italian people are Israelites. And I don't know if y'all remember, when Apostle Gabar'S so studiously started learning to speak Italian. And this is what this story stems from. I was in chef school, and there was this Italian guy. You know, um, his name is Scotty. He used to call me Paulie. And Paulie, hey Paulie, come here, Paulie, hey. Like he kind of like took a liking to me. Because I was different. It's just like, like I was in the truth, and the truth. The scriptures say the truth shall make you free. And I was different from all the guys that he had met, and he kind of took to me. He kind of like won't always be in my presence. He kind of always sounded like, he was always one of those dudes that was always around. I like the guy. I think of the guy to this day. I like the guy. Act just like a nigga. Just act just like us. So it was like, like, I don't know what this guy. He looked like a white boy, but he act just like Jake. And the truth. This is like my, like when I was early in the truth explained it all before I met the guy. And I was like, man, I think this dude is an Israelite, and he's Italian, and like he used to like lose his temper all the time, and I was just like, man, like this dude is like fucking angry all the time. But I was angry all the time. I was a young Israelite. I was angry all the time, and like my spirit kind of resonated with him. Like, this guy, he acts just like me. And so I kind of like, it's like, he's like calling me Paulie, and I was like, I kind of, like took to the guy, like he kind of like, like Italian guy calls you Paulie, you like family, and the guy kind of took to me, and he was just like, man, like, I used to tell him, look, man, let's get away from these people, and let's go and maybe we should go and just like hang out in the park so you can get a breather, because like, bro, like you're angry, I like you, bro, like, like we're cool, maybe you should like kind of get some. It was like a park, like a block away from us, for a block away from the school. I said, like, hey, maybe we should just walk to this park and like kind of calm down, because like if you keep snapping on everybody, you're not gonna make it through chef school. I kind of took to the guy, because the guy, hey, Paulie, like the guy kind of took to me. I was young in the faith, and I was just learning about the confusing of faces, and the guy, he looked like a white boy, but like I was just learning about confusing the faces. I was like, this dude is an Israelite, and he was telling me about how his father. He was telling me, Gabar'S out of the spirit, it's okay through the spirit. He's telling me a lot about his father. Yeah, my father, he's like half Italian, and his father was Italian, but his mother was not, and this and that, and they kind of look at us like half breeds or whatever, but I know my dad has like respect amongst the mob, and I was like, damn, like, he's telling me all these wild stories, like, one time I knocked on the door, my dad, he said, I knock with a long arm, Paulie, I knock with a long arm, meaning that I gotta reach my arm across the door to knock, because my dad'll put like, my dad'll put like 2-3 bullet holes through the door. If you wake him out of sleep, he'll like, he'll kind of lose it. I was like, shit, really? Like I didn't know what the fuck, I didn't know what was going on. I was like, God damn, It's like, man, one time I kind of reached across and knocked my dad, kind of tore the, he grabbed a Street 57 and tore a fucking hole through the door. I was like, shit, So I'm in chef school. I'm fresh in the truth. I'm young. I'm a young man in the truth. I had to be about 2 years in. And he was like telling me all this shit, and I'm just like, damn. And I should take him to the park every lunch break, because I was, I understood that it was confusing the faces. I was like, this dude is a Jake. And I was just like, you know what, I'm kind of like, the guy's taking to me, so I'm kind of like pull him off. I'm kind of like pull him off to the side and try to deal with him. And like he was in protective custody because his father was in the mob, and you know I'm not gonna say no names. If he hears this lesson, it was so be it. But his father was in the mob. He's like, I used to knock on the door. My father would blow holes through the door. You know, my father was like, you know, um, he kind of left the mob and everything. Ain't no leaving the mob. But he was like, one time I came in late. My father was like blowing, start shooting through the door. And he's like, man, my father always taught me to knock with a long hand. And, it's just like, and I want to get to the point of the story. His grandmother was deported back to Italy. Um, she was Italian. They're all Italian. Mafia type people. And one day I'm walking them to the park, and my phone must have not been locked, and I kind of pocket dialed. I pocket dialed Apostle Gabar'S video on the way to the park, and the video is playing. I don't know how long the video was playing, but when we got to the park, it got quiet. I'm in Chicago. I'm going to Le Cordon Bleu Chef School, Chicago, right by where the old Caprini Green was. And I'm like, I'm walking, and the Spirit allowed my phone to unlock in my pocket, and click on Apostle Gabar'S video, and Apostle Gabar'S talking. This is when Apostle Gabar was speaking Italian, but this was one of his regular videos. It wasn't in Italian, and like the guy that I'm with, Scotty, he's like, oh shit, like when we got to the park. I'm so deep in talking to it's Jake. You trying to help him. I'm focused on him, but he's focused on me. But he's focused on me to the more than the point that I'm focused on him. He's like, who's that coming out of your pocket? He's like, yo. He's like, those sounds like the wise man of New York. He's like those sound like that sounds like the wise man of New York. And when he said it, I kind of, I heard my phone. I heard Apostle Gabar speaking a video in English. I heard his voice, and I was like, "Oh shit!" I put my phone out of my pocket. I got defensive. Like, what do you mean, the wise men in New York? What do you mean? What do you mean by that? He's like, "No, those guys that be talking about the Bible in New York, the wise men." And I'm like, oh shit! Like, this guy, what you know about the elders? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like that guy, that guy's voice, the guy whose voice is speaking, the guy speaks Italian. My grandmother sends me videos of this guy. My grandmother sent me videos of this guy speaking Italian. I know that voice. And it was like like, damn, like, drew me to this guy, like, like, recognizes Apostle Gabar's voice, and I'm like, yeah, man, like, you gotta understand, like, hey, you gotta understand this, man, like, um, you guys are Israelites, man. Like, I kind of like went to the breakdown. videos of this guy like every fucking week. My grandmother sent me videos of this guy. That's why I know that, like his grandmother, she got deported back over to Italy, but she was in America, illegal. She got deported back to Italy, but she still listened to Apostle Gabar'S videos. You know, his grandmother Anna, like his grandmother Anna sent the video of Apostle Gabar speaking in Italian. And like, this is not the great part of the story. Like, like I was supposed to be going to New York like 2 weeks, like, or a week and a half or 2 weeks. After this happened, like I'm supposed to be going to New York, to visit the apostles, right? I'm just like, yeah, like, like it was crazy. Like, yeah, this is one of my teachers. This is this is the man of the Lord. This is like one of my teachers, you know, and um, for this man's this is how you know that what we're doing is not bullshit, bro. Even if that was sent that one family to hear Apostle Gabar, he might not even understand why he was speaking Italian, bro, or why he was learning Italian. But you know what? The Spirit of the Lord is so fucking surgical and so fucking raw that the Lord made Apostle Gabar learn Italian and do videos in Italian. And when I went to New York, I'm talking to Apostle Gabar. I'm like, this is my first time meeting the man. I'm like, I'm like, shit, I'm fried, bro. Like, I'm not. Maybe I shouldn't be around men like this. But Apostle Gabar was like, yeah, I'm doing videos in Italian, and I told him, I said, yeah, you doing videos in Italian? He's like, yeah, He's like, I don't know if it's getting. I know, I believe that Apostle Gabar will remember this conversation that we had. But like, it's like, yeah, I'm doing videos in Italian. I don't know, like, if I'm reaching everybody and this and that. And he's like, I was like, no. I said, Apostle, look, Apostle. And I told Apostle Gabar, I was like, yeah, my friend, I'm in chef school with his grandmother listens to your videos. His grandmother, like, like my friend I'm in school with is like, like somebody I'm cool with, like that accepted me as a friend. His grandmother listens to your videos. She sends his videos. She sends your videos to him in Italian, and Apostle Gabar pulls out his phone. Like, I'm with Apostle Gabar. Apostle Gabar pulls out his phone, and the first message that he saw was like, "Yeah, I'm in Italy. I'm in Italy, and I can hear your videos just fine." And I don't know if this is the same woman. I don't know if this is the same woman, brother's grandmother. I'm just gonna leave it at that. But you know what? It was the same name, Anna. It was the same name as the brother's grandmother. I don't know if it was the same woman, but you know what? What I do know is that at that specific time, the Spirit put me with a brother. It had me grow fond of a brother whose grandmother was listening to the Apostles of Great Millstone. And it's astronomical. No, when he heard this is what he said. Like, when he heard the Apostles' voice speaking in English, this is what he said. You listen to the wise man of New York. You listen to the wise man of New York. My grandmother sent me these men's videos. So I know that he was talking about the apostles, man. I know he was talking about Apostle Gabar. Because when he heard his voice speaking in English, he heard the same voice he heard speaking in Italian. And you brothers have been around for a while. You remember when Apostle Gabar was like going on the whole Italian, speaking, doing videos in Italian. And, like, it's wild, man. Like, me, I was shy. Like, faith in Yahweh Bashimi I was shy is unshaken and unmoved, bro. Because I know that was the Spirit of the Lord that made that happen. I don't know if it's for me to see that I was going in the right direction, because I believe I was a believer at that time, but like it increased my faith, man. Hey, brothers, you brothers and sisters, we going in the right direction. We sending the apostle